Hello everyone and welcome back to the last game we'll be showing from the Goldmoney Asian Rapid knockouts. It's the clash for third place and it's Magnus Carlsen versus Ding Liren. Now this is the Blitz section, and in the Rapid section, since Magnus won the first match, Ding needed to bounce back to force tiebreaks. And did he win or what? He won 3 games against Magnus in a row, so he completely crushed him in the Rapid section, which is, well, just incredible. But I guess Magnus maybe adopted a little bit of a different tactic. He only needed a draw, and then it backfired, and Ding was able to win 3 games in a row. So he was able to force tiebreaks, and now we are in the Blitz section. 2 games of Blitz will be played, and then if that also is a tie, then we go into Armageddon. So this is the first game of the Blitz. Magnus has the white pieces. Now let's see if Ding can make it 4 in a row. So without further ado, let's check it out. It's quite the game. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Magnus opens with e4. We have e5 by Ding, knight f3, knight to c6, and now bishop to b5. Going for the Ruy Lopez. We have a6 by Ding, Morphy's defense, bishop to a4, and now knight to f6. So this will be a very, very standard opening. We have castles, bishop to e7, and d3 now. Going for the Martinez variation. We have b5 now, chasing away this light square bishop, bishop to b3, and the d6. We have c3 and castle. So very standard Ruy Lopez moves. And now, as usual, when black advances these pawns on the queen side like this, you want to undermine them by pushing a4. This is what Magnus does. He plays a4, bishop to d7. Ding just continues development, and the bishop back to c2 now. You need additional support for the e4 pawn, and then sometimes in the future you're going to play d4 to grab more space in the center. We have rook to e8, and now rook to e1. h6 by Ding, now knight to b2, knight b to d2 now, with ideas of shifting knight over to f1, maybe to e3, maybe to g3, depending on what black plays. We have bishop to f8, now the rook is nicely placed on the e file, and h3. We have rook to b8 by Ding, and now there are some games that reach this exact same position, like the game Yakovenko versus Tomaszewski, where knight to b3 was played. That game ended in a draw, and also there is Grandelius versus Wojtaszek that also ended in a draw, where a captures on b5 was played. But here, in this game, Magnus decided, after watching most of my videos, that most of the games that he loses are due to the fact that he never got to play b4. So here, Magnus says, alright, let's not make the same mistake again. I'm gonna play b4 now. So it is only now, as of move 14, that we have a completely new game. So let's see how Ding deals with this b4 idea. He just continues with knight to e7. He wants to shift this knight over to g6 and then gain some control over the f4 square, because this knight is coming to h5, and then both of the knights will be nicely controlling the f4 square. So a captures on b5 by Magnus, a captures, and now d4. As you now have sufficient support here on the e4 pawn, you can grab more space in the center. Ding continues with knight to g6, and now knight to b3. We have rook to a8. Ding says, all right, you have a nice rook on the open a file. I'm going to do the same. So rook to a8, and now bishop to d2. So if Ding captures here, Magnus can just recapture with the queen. And here Ding does capture with rook captures on a1, which is usually there's a saying in chess that you shouldn't capture if it doesn't bring you something. Just capturing for the sake of captures isn't really the way to go. But here it's very hard for Ding to improve his position in any way. The position is very solid for both black and white, but it's very hard for black to find the move. Just to give you an example, for example, if you go knight to f4, which makes sense because you kind of know that white will not give up his bishop pair just to double up your f pawn. But here it kind of wins by force, because after you trade the rooks, the queen leaves the defense of the bishop here, and now this is a free pawn. That's the problem, because now if d captures on e5, now you eliminate the knight, and after pawn captures you play e5 and you dislodge this knight, which is now the only defender of this bishop, and it's just a winning position for white. So here, for the lack of a better move, Ding decides to trade here. We have rook captures on a1, queen captures on a1, and now queen to c8. Ding already has 2 knights here on the king side. He might be interested in some bishop captures on h3 action, just giving up the bishop for these 2 pawns. So here, king to h2, Magnus doesn't allow this. He adds additional support to the h3 pawn, and now knight to h5. As planned, one of the knights can now come to to f4. You can strike in the center with f5 if you want. So black has a lot to play for. We have bishop to d3 now, with ideas of, well, just challenging this pawn. We might also bring a queen into the game to help out with this. And now knight h to f4. So as planned, this knight is now a monster here. But now bishop to f1, and this is very important. The bishop came to d3 not only to attack this pawn, but also to be shifted to f1 to help out with the defense of the king side. But from here you are still attacking this, so it might be useful later on. This bishop could be a most valuable piece later in the game. So here we have c6, just keeping that pawn nicely defended, and now Magnus captures on e5. So d captures on e5, d captures, and now bishop to e3. Again, he didn't capture just for the sake of captures, he wanted to free the d4 square for the bishop, so now the bishop also gains control of the c5 square. So bishop to e6 now, challenging the knight and basically inviting the knight to c5. So knight to c5, and here Ding captures, probably thinking that Magnus will capture with the bishop, and I mean, who wouldn't? Wouldn't we all just capture back with the bishop? But no, Magnus captures with the b pawn. And it's a very interesting decision. It really breaks the harmony of White's pawns, and it kind of makes the game more interesting. But I think what it actually does is this rook wants to come to d6 at some point. And while you could do this with the bishop being on c5, now that the pawn is here, you can bring the rook to d6, and you don't have to keep your bishop on c5. The bishop can be used elsewhere. So maybe this is what Magnus was going for. And later on, you can always undermine black with a move like c4. So here we have f6, not going for the immediate f5. This could be a bit too dangerous. So just f6, adding another defender to the e5 pawn, and now rook to d1. Continuing with the plan of bringing the rook to d6. So king to h7. And now rook to d6. We have f5 now by Ding, saying, okay, what is the rook really doing here? But now comes bishop captures on f4 by Magnus. E captures on f4, and now knight to d4. Putting a lot of pressure on black's position. Also now there's a double attack here on the c6 pawn. So knight to e5, defending the c6 pawn. And now what do? Well, there's a double attack here on the f5 pawn. So let's bring more pressure. Queen to b1. And this is a really strong move. Now you are just threatening f captures on e captures on f5, and if you capture here, then the problem is just queen captures, you lose a knight. And if you move the knight, for example, to g6, then you lose the bishop, because then the knight, the rook, and the queen attack this bishop here. So after this queen to b1, Ding forced to play g6 to add more protection here, but now Magnus just goes queen to c1. He shifts the attention over to the f4 pawn. And this is a blitz game, so players don't have all the time in the world to calculate, but I will just show a super fun line that starts with bishop to d3. We just add more pressure to this pawn here, and now black will have to capture something to alleviate some of the pressure. So let's say knight captures on d3, queen captures, and now again you have to play something. Now this pawn is still hanging, so bishop to d7, but now we play knight to f3, again with a double attack on the bishop. We can defend the bishop, but now knight to e5, add more pressure to the bishop. So what can you play here? Well, you could play f captures on e4, challenge White's queen a little bit, but now queen to d4. Now the knight is defended, and there's still a triple attack on the bishop, so it's just hopeless for black. You could try bishop to e8, but now knight to g4. And this is just bad. The knight can now come to f6, and we could see something like queen to f5, but now rook to d8. Now the bishop can never move because you're getting checkmated. And now also you're just threatening knight to f6 check to pick up the bishop here, because there will be a double attack on the bishop. But not only this, after knight to f6 check, the king will be forced on this diagonal, and that's just terrible, as the queen occupies this diagonal. So we would see something like rook to e6, defending this twice, but we don't care. We just move the rook from the defense of the f6 pawn, rook captures knight f6 check, and now the king is forced to the dark square. To the dark squares, and that's the queen's territory. So king here, knight captures with a double check, and that's it. Black resigns. King f8, knight goes here, and you're up a piece, completely winning. So it's a fun line, but like I said, it's a blitz game, but I wanted to show you that it was in the position. So here, queen to c1, which is also very strong, attacking this pawn. And now Ding says, all right, now we're going to go back, bishop to d7. Now this pawn is defended, and now the knight can move. But now We have E captures on f5 and now g5. This is Ding's idea. He gave up a pawn to kind of try and keep things solid, but now queen to c2. Putting the queen on this long diagonal. Ding says, all right, for the moment, this is not a problem. I'm just going to play rook to g8. Maybe I can still do some damage here. But Magnus says, nope, queen to e4. He attacks the knight here on e5. Queen to e8, defending the knight, and now knight to e6, cutting off the queen's defense of the knight on e5. So what do you play here? Ding has to play something. He played knight to f7. He moved the knight, but now it's actually a forced mate in 9 for white, which I'm sure you guys are going to find, because only the first 2 moves are really important. After that, it's all, just black trying to survive by giving up as much material as possible. So feel free to pause the video here and try to find the quickest way to victory for Magnus while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting it, and well, what a move it is. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's f6 with check. So the king is now in check, and there's not all that much you can do here, because if you block with the rook, then you get the, well, just the very impressive rook captures on d7. It's a cheap trick, but it gets the job done. If queen captures, knight to f8, check just wins the queen, and you will... you're getting checkmated very soon. So after f6 check, Ding moved the king back to h8, but now comes the move you had to see. Our good friend, the light square bishop, says again, hello everyone, plays bishop to d3, and that's it. It was in this position that Ding Liren resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. The queen to h7 checkmate is unstoppable, and there's no way you can prevent this. And why I said it's a forced mate in 9, because now some of you will say, yes, but you can give up the rook and then defend with queen to g8. Well, yes, that's why it's a forced mate in 9 and not a forced mate in 3. But it's pointless to play this. Queen can block. We're gonna capture here and then capture the bishop. It's just unplayable. It's a very, very sad position for black. But yeah, Ding, of course, not interested in continuing this. After bishop to d3, he resigned the game, and the Magnus now, after losing the first 3 rapid games and the rapid match, now leads by winning the first of the blitz games. And in the second game of the blitz section, well, the game ended in a draw, which means that Magnus is the winner, and he clinches 3rd place of this Goldmoney Asian Rapid. So it's Levon first, Artemiev second, and Magnus in 3rd place. So really awesome stuff. The game Levon played against Artemiev, the previous video that we've shown, it was like Levon was creating a masterpiece. He was writing his I don't know what to call it, sort of a chess symphony. So really an outstanding game. If you haven't seen it, do check it out. It will be one of the videos that will appear here at any moment. But yeah, I mean, just very impressive stuff. So like I said, this is the last game we'll be showing from the Goldmoney Asian Rapid. Hope you guys enjoyed this short coverage. And now we're going to check out some other things that are happening in the chess world, and also what you all have been waiting for, continuing the Morphy saga, as we don't have a lot to go on there, but it's time to conclude things. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Wolfgang Schmidt, Simon Cervilla, Bruce B. Backley, Mark Rappert, and Paul and Miles Murphy for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Morphy saga, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent start of your week.